Welcome to this explainer. I am so incredibly thrilled you're here because today we are diving into one of the most fascinating behind-the-scenes logistical puzzles in modern business. When Spirit Airlines recently shut down, it obviously made massive headlines. But here's the thing. The story absolutely didn't end when operations ceased. In fact, for the aircraft themselves, a whole new, highly lucrative chapter was just beginning. We are going to break down the immediate aftermath, the really complex economics of airline fleets, and the billion-dollar aftermarket that profits from these grounded giants. It's a question that most travelers just never even think to ask, right? Where exactly do bankrupt airplanes go? I mean, think about it. An airline doesn't just consist of, desks and computers. It is built on massive, highly regulated, multi-million-dollar pieces of heavy machinery. When the music suddenly stops, you've got a staggering problem on your hands. You are suddenly left with a massive, grounded fleet scattered all across the map, just taking up premium real estate at active commercial airports. Just picture the sheer surrealness of this visual for a second. We're talking about dozens of those highly recognizable, bright canary yellow jets suddenly stranded all over the country. One day, they are ferrying thousands of vacationers and business travelers, and literally the next day, they are sitting idle on the tarmac, entirely frozen in place. They need a place to go, and getting them there is a massive race against the clock. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Moving empty airplanes. The repo mission. To solve a huge logistical nightmare like this, you have to bring in specialized recovery teams. Enter pilot Steve Giordano and his team. Their job was essentially a massive repo mission. Take these aircraft back from Spirit Airlines after they ceased operations. And the speed at which they had to operate, just incredible. Within a mere 8 days, they successfully moved all of these stranded planes from various airports throughout the United States. Their destinations, these highly specialized desert facilities in Marana, just north of Tucson, and Goodyear on the west side of Phoenix, Arizona. Turns out, the dry desert air is absolutely perfect for preserving these giant machines. Now, as you can see laid out here, the sheer amount of red tape involved is staggering. It's like a giant puzzle. You can't just jump in, turn the key, and fly off. When a large commercial aircraft is no longer on an airline's official operating certificate, it legally requires massive infrastructure just to move. Step 1 is a rigorous official FAA inspection. Step 2, the FAA has to issue a special permit to guarantee the airplane's airworthiness. And step 3 involves just a mountain of logistics, handling fuel, securing airport slots, filing flight plans, doing weather briefings, and arranging crew travel. And because they can't bring passengers, they have to supply all the required crew members themselves. The reality of these repo flights is honestly quite a trip. Steve Giordano noted that his team basically acts as the pilots, the flight attendants, and the rampers. They do the whole shebang. And he shared this fantastic detail, saying, "I was eating Spirit snacks that were still in the galley carts." I mean, it's incredibly surreal. Imagine being on a massive commercial aircraft for a 4-hour flight from Philly to Arizona. The cabin is entirely empty of passengers, the cockpit door is just propped wide open, and since there's obviously no catering service, the crew is literally just digging into the leftover airline snacks in the galley to get by. Let's move to Section 2, the airplane leasing model, and see how this builds. Once these planes are safely parked out in the desert, a huge financial untangling begins. Why? Well, because airlines rarely own their entire fleets outright. So an operational shutdown triggers a frantic rush by lessors to reclaim their multi-million-dollar property before it depreciates. The true owners of those planes, these massive commercial leasing companies, have to quickly step in, legally secure their assets, and make sure they don't end up tied up indefinitely in bankruptcy court. It's basically like renting a car, but on a massive corporate scale. Just look at this number, 66. According to official court filings, this is the exact number of airplanes that Spirit Airlines had under lease when it went under. That is 66 massive, highly valuable assets that suddenly needed to be tracked down, legally secured, and physically returned to the companies that actually owned them. So the fleet is essentially split right down the middle in the eyes of the court. The leased planes, as we just discussed, are aggressively repossessed by the lessors who want their property back pronto. But what about the planes Spirit actually did own? Well, back in May, the bankruptcy judge officially approved a motion to sell the aircraft that were owned outright by Spirit Airlines. The capital raised from selling those owned jets goes directly toward helping to repay the airline's mountain of creditors. Which brings us to Section 3, a billion-dollar parts market. So zooming out a bit, what is the ultimate fate of all these planes, both owned and leased? While some are definitely going to be leased out intact to other airlines, many face a very different destiny. To understand why dismantling a plane is often so profitable, we have to look at the global aerospace supply chain. For years now, this industry has been grappling with severe turmoil. On one side of the equation, the two manufacturing giants, Boeing and Airbus, have faced immense delays, with the production of new airplanes and engines falling way behind schedule. On the other side, because new planes aren't arriving, airlines are basically forced to keep their older planes flying much longer. And that creates an intense, insatiable demand for spare parts to maintain those aging fleets. So the crucial point is this absolute frenzy is being driven by an $11 billion problem. In April, the International Air Transport Association, or IATA, estimated that these supply chain disruptions were costing the airline industry an additional $11 billion. While Boeing and Airbus have made some recent progress in ramping up their production, the industry is still absolutely starved for parts. This massive shortage is exactly why a grounded, bankrupt fleet is viewed by the market as an absolute goldmine. Let's break down the anatomy of a scrapped jet, because they are definitely not all created equal when they're dismantled. First and foremost, engines are in incredibly short supply right now. In fact, the engines alone sometimes make up the absolute bulk of an entire aircraft's value. The experts note that older tech engines, specifically the V2500 models, are still in exceptionally high demand. If an engine is operational, it will be very welcomed by the market. As for the airframes, the actual physical body of the plane, their fate is a bit trickier. It really depends on current market demand and whether there's physical space actually available in MROs, those are maintenance, repair, and overhaul facilities, and specialized part-out shops to process all that scrap material.
And this brilliantly illustrates the staggering economics at play here. Just 3 years ago, a popular used Pratt & Whitney engine was valued at about $11.3 million. Fast forward to this past January, that exact same type of engine was going for about $14.5 million. I mean, that is a massive leap in value for a single used engine. Multiply that by dozens of planes, each with 2 engines, and you really start to see the astronomical sums of money moving behind the scenes out in the desert.
What you should really take away from this explainer is that the death of an airline absolutely does not mean the death of its airplanes. Even entirely outside of a bankruptcy scenario, when older airplanes are simply retired to make way for shiny new models, they routinely find new homes. Their stripped-down parts can be worth millions upon millions of dollars. Spirit Airlines as an operating entity might be gone, but its planes are already actively finding new lives in a rapidly changing, extremely lucrative aftermarket. It really changes how you look at commercial aviation, doesn't it? The parts keeping you safely in the air today might have literally spent a month sitting in the Arizona desert after their previous owner went bust. So I leave you with this final thought. The next time you settle into your seat for a flight, will you look around the cabin and wonder whose plane you're really on? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, stay curious, and I will catch you on the next one.